start? I mean, I have different parts running different places. I guess the first part to show is AWS stuff. Okay, so let's go to, so I use Amazon Web Services for this setup. I feel like it's the most mature platform. It makes it really easy for me to get everything done correctly. I have Code Commit. Code Commit is where I have my projects. So everything is linked up with the code pipeline and Code Commit. So this is where the Git stuff is.
Yeah.
Right. So I have my project in here, and then okay, it's yeah, and it's connected through a bunch of services for different things. So Elastic Beanstalk serves the server. You have the client in S3 that's served through CloudFront, and the system is automatic like this through pipelines. So I can show you how this works. So this is one that I'm using. So basically, whenever I push to master on my project, or I make a pull or merge a pull request, it'll go to Code Commit and it'll go through the build pipeline and get everything. But yeah, the important part here is, so you saw the build thing that I talked about before. So I have a little build specification here that runs through all the stuff that's required for the system. I won't, again, it's very basic. It just does the stuff it has to do, but yeah. So during development of this kind of system, you use Docker. I'm using, again, Elm for this. I'm using Node for a bit of scripting. Yeah, and what you get during development is something along these lines. So you have this console that's running that you can serve. I can serve this locally. I can serve this in production. It has all this data with different stuff in it. Again, this is a small thing with my music and some login and some stuff. You can see the individual things you're working with.
Yeah.
So this is the full UI for building the data system. Like this is the whole thing for doing data. Okay, so like if I want to add a table, I would do it here. And I would go afterwards, after I made the table, I would go control the permissions based on roles. These roles are distributed to people logged into the system using JSON Web Tokens. It's okay. So, but it's yeah, you provide some credentials. The system gives you back a token that describes who you are and proves that you are the person that you are, and it can include what roles you have, and the roles pretty much you in the UI code. You say, well, if the user is logged in with this token and this token has the admin role, then maybe I show this view and I give this, and it's very granular like that. So this is the authorization part of it. Usually you think about access rights in authorization and authentication. So authentication is who are you, and authorization is what do you have permission to do.
Yes.
So in this system, admin can do everything. A guest is somebody who's not logged in, and a regular is somebody who has access but not full. And as you can see, for selection is just reading fields from the row. I can control pretty much everything about, well, I could check, well, maybe the ID of this user should be equal to maybe the user ID in the system, for example. And I could add those roles. I can control what fields you can access. Yeah, this kind of stuff. Aggregate queries for lists, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, so that's that part. You have relationships here as well. Artists have music, obviously. It's an array relationship. You can manipulate these. If I took Bookswap's database and I just set it up locally and put Hasura on top of it, it would auto-generate all this stuff from the database.
Okay.
And then all this permission stuff is metadata next to it. Yeah. And the client code for Elm for the front end is auto-generated. That's one command. So you see in here, I have this data generate command. It basically just looks at all the stuff I built in this UI, all the different stuff about the different tables, and then it just introspects the schema and asks, what can I do from this client application? And then you see in my build folder, I have this data folder. It's filled with source code, computer generated.
Okay.
So if I go to object in here, you can see that, oh, there's some stuff about, oh, oops, that's not the right one, music.
That's pretty quick then. You said you don't do
It's
things quickly.
insanely fast.
I
And
mean, I say the same. You said you don't do things fast. If you set up such a thing, then you do things very fast. Indeed, no?
what do you mean?
Creating
No,
new features, it's fast.
yeah, it's insanely fast. And it doesn't require code. There's no server code. There's no Node.js code that fails. It
Yeah.
never happens. And another cool thing is because of the way Elm works, Elm has full type inference. All values in the running program has a type, a known type.
Okay.
If you're working with JSON, you can't pretend the JSON has a particular shape. You decode it into a shape, and that decoding might fail or succeed, and you have to handle both cases.
Okay.
So the point is that the generated code that I make here is Elm code, and it's guaranteed to work. I don't have to write any integration tests because in CI, before it's deployed, it tests if the code builds. And if I'm integrating wrong, then this generated code won't allow my client application to compile. 0 tests, 0 server code, and a full guarantee that the client and the backend is integrated correctly.
Okay,
it can't go wrong. Yeah, it's. I mean, my build just fails. If, like you saw in the Amazon view that I showed you here in pipelines, if I made a mistake, I forgot to generate whatever the backend should be doing. This step will just fail.
Yeah.
It will never go to production, and I don't have to work for that. I get that for free. That's very nice. And this is more I think this is more flexible than the way you would usually set up a database. What you would have to do would be to talk to the customer, for example, Malis. Is that right? And then you would go through with her. Well, like this is the information that we have on customers, on books, on swaps we're doing, blah 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 blah. And you would basically just set up the fields and the relationships correctly according to the database they have, and just generate all the code for it.
Yeah.
Figure out who has access to what. Like that's not even programming. That's just a normal conversation about who can do what and what actors belong to the system. Yeah, so this is a quite general system. It would be quite easy to take the stuff that I have here, delete it, and put in whatever logic that would be appropriate for whatever application. It compiles GraphQL to SQL. So when a user asks for something, let's say I can show you a little bit here. So for example, in this system, it's music, but you can see I could ask for artists. I want their names. I want their music. I want their, let's see, what would be nice? Well, we want the title, I guess, maybe the addition of the track. Okay, so artists and tracks, blah, blah, blah.
Okay,
blah, blah.
I see, yeah.
And you can see that, oh, there's some Pendulum here. There's some Rob Swire remix, something, blah, blah, blah. There's aggregates as well. How many are there? I can order things. Like pagination is built in. I never have to write code for that. It's built in. So, but these queries are, you can imagine the table joins in SQL and how much memory the server would use to do big queries. But since Hasura compiles these GraphQL queries into SQL, it's very efficient. So it's quite cheap. The server is running at very low memory.
Yeah.
So this version of it for me is, so you can, Elastic Beanstalk is where the server is running through Docker. Okay. But yeah, you can, I can't really, some configuration here. This system that I'm using right now, it's only for me. It's for my phone and my tablet. But the capacity is like micro. It's the minimum instance. And it's using very little memory. And again, as I showed you on the billing dashboard for this particular setup, it's, let's see, do we have it over here? Is it even mentioned? No, I'm using so little memory on my current setup that I get it for free. It's how I would set up a system, just to avoid having a lot of code to maintain. the biggest prize, I think, is a lot of code, especially when it's JavaScript, because it's so hard to refactor.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the kind of system I would suggest to you. I'm using 7 services. I'm using so I have a list. I'm gonna be teaching a couple of people how to use Amazon this way very soon. Do you still see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so I made this demo GitHub repo for them with a little, it has a little React app inside, just a very, very small client, very small server. We're not gonna touch any of that. We're just gonna do the whole Amazon setup like I showed you with this. And I'm gonna teach them, and we're gonna document the whole process, because I don't have a documented version of how I do all of this. And I wanted that, so I offered them to sit in on that. Account creation, access control, setting GitHub, the code commit stuff. There's not a lot of services here, really. It's code commit, it's Elastic Beanstalk, there's the pipelines I showed you, the code build, automatic build and deployment. There's S3 for build artifacts, and yeah, and whatever else you want to store. CloudFront for server. I think for someone who comes in and want to get work done, being stuck with SQL and Node.js and screens and all this crazy stuff is gonna be very confusing. I think it's much easier to just give people access to the Git repo, show them how to do that UI stuff I showed you, no code, just add a table, add some relationships, generate some code, and then just do the front end. Been around for 8 years now, and Evan is still very committed to it. I've built developer tools for the language. I don't know if you saw those.
Yeah, I had them, but I don't know how to have them.
Yeah, and Evan himself gave me some feedback on how to performance optimize it. So I have that. I don't know if. Okay, I'm not sharing screen anymore. But I did like a blog post on the side, and Evan chipped in, and a lot of the other people chipped in to help me improve it a little bit. And it ended up being merged into the official debugger in the language. I'm very committed to using Elm. Elm is the, you know how an idea sometimes is half-baked because it doesn't belong where it is. So React is like that. React is half-baked. It doesn't really belong in JavaScript because it's doing stuff that isn't natural to the language.
Yeah.
See if I can get this thing going fast. So just to give you an idea of why I think Elm is nice, it can be demonstrated in like one very, very easy example here. So let's say I want to add, I have another route I want to add.
Yeah.
It's for you, for Kasper.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Do you see what just happened on the screen? The red lines?
Yeah.
If the route is this, then do this. If the route is that, then do that. Oh, I'm missing one. I'm missing the Kasper one. So, okay, I need to handle that situation. For Kasper, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea.
I get that, yeah.
I have to handle that. I have to handle this. I have to handle this.
Yeah.
If I add another route in a JavaScript program, and this is in the small. This is a very small example. But this scales for every case. No matter how big the system is, it will always tell me what I'm missing for the thing to work. That's impossible in JavaScript because of the way the language works. And I really love that I don't even have to use my brain thinking of code. So for my project, I'm doing this. So see what's the code is running. I change something to be a password field. Notice that it's not losing state.
Yeah.
Stays where it is.
Or how they call it, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't really work fully in Dart. In Elm, it works always, guaranteed.
Okay.
So that's really, if I change how you input a password, well, I get to the state right before that. So it can even go as far as possible up until the point where I made the change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, there's a lot of nice things about Elm and why I want to use that. It's very, if people used it, it would be great, but people won't because people are religious. People are religious about their tools and they swear by them. And Elm is very different. It has to be different to be good. Well, better. People don't like different. If you look at a Turbo Pascal program, I mean, it's different from Fortran and it's different from JavaScript. but it's not that different.
I need
It's
a
still
huge
objects.
financial win here. I need to see a huge financial win. I mean, I'm an investor type. I like to put money. I don't like to take money out immediately. I like to do things in a proper way and see
Yeah.
a big win after years. And I see here big win after years.
I think so too,
yeah.
but I don't know how popular it will be. It probably won't be popular because it's different. People don't like different that much. They want something that looks like what they know. If you look at JavaScript, C#, Java, all these languages, they're the same language, basically. They have different compilers and different performance, but they all mutate objects and pass them around and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
People want that because they know that already. If you took people who know programming, I bet you could teach them Elm faster because it's simpler and smaller. But people who already know JavaScript and Java and C#, it's too different for them. They won't like it. They're too religious about it. Well, there's PureScript. PureScript is a little bit like Elm, and they also try to do web development the same way. But it's monads and abstract math, and it's not for regular people. Elm is for teaching and learning, and they have great documentation like Amazon Web Services and like Hasura, like I talked about. If
I
fail
googled about Elm when I heard about it, and one minus they brought out was that it has bad documentation, poor documentation compared to, for example, Vue.js.
Yes, because Vue.js has a lot of money behind it because people are familiar with it, so it fits into their religion about tools, JavaScript, and all this. I don't think it has poor documentation, but it's very different.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an official guide that teaches people how to use it, and architecturally it's sound as well. All modules pretty much follow the same architecture. There's not a lot to teach there. Cheap to refactor as well. Even with the dump pile Bookswap is right now the state it's in, I can still refactor it and make it nice. It'll take time, but it's possible because of the type system and because of Elm UI and these tools. Elm guide is like 20 pages, and then you know most of what you need to know to use the language correctly. Evan Yu, the guy who made Vue, I was using Meteor, a JavaScript framework, while he was working at Meteor. He was doing Vue in his spare time as a side project at that point. So it wasn't a real project back then. And he wanted to use it instead of Blaze, which was the front end for Meteor at that time. And then when Meteor decided that React and Angular were going to be the future, Evan Yu pretty much ditched Meteor.js and went to do his open source solo Vue.js thing. And he did that very successfully. But I don't think it's drastically different from all the other tools that exist. I don't think it's a great tool. Well, it's great, but it's not different enough to be a lot better. It gives me, you saw the thing I did with the routes before?
Yeah.
It works like that for almost everything in the language. If I make a change, it will tell me where I need to adjust for everything to work. And runtime exceptions doesn't exist. It can't break.
Yeah, it's better.
Did you know that? No runtime errors. That's a guarantee.
Yeah, that's important.
It's nice. It's not nice because it never fails, because it does fail. You can make an infinite loop and run out of memory. Of course you can. Yeah. But it's nice because it will tell me where I'm not handling a case I should be handling. So I don't need to crawl around the code and don't know what I'm doing. It just leads me to where the error is. And once I've filled out everything in the small, the big just works.
Yeah.
It's very nice. Yeah. But I think I get very talky about these things. So I should, there's a cost. I mean, like if you have to handle every possible case, you're gonna be some programs you don't care if they break. Elm is not good for those cases. If you don't care if the code breaks and you just want something done really, really, really fast, and you don't care if it just breaks completely, then don't use Elm because it wouldn't be good for that. Elm wants you to handle every case in the code, right?
It's a good choice if you're trying to build something bigger and you want to
Scalable.
scale, you want to get something set up. You maybe spend more time to set it up, but then you want to be able, you want the freedom that, okay, let's add little functionality here today, already tomorrow a little bit there. I want something to start building it and growing it over the longer time period.
Yeah.
And I feel Elm is good thing for such a project.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, but again,
Yeah.
I'm biased. I like it, so I'm very biased in this regard, right?
Well, of course you like it. You like the good things. I mean, it would be different if you try to sell it to me, but you're not trying to sell it to me. I mean,
It has to be done differently. Elm can't play music. So what I did was, what I really like Elm for building the UI and for sending HTTP requests and all this stuff. It's very nice for that. So I built the app in that. And then I can show you a little example here. So you can see in the code here, like I'm setting up Elm up here, and then I'm saying, well, when this message comes out, if I ask it to start the music, or stop the music, or seek, or whatever, decrypt the token. Also, cryptography is not available in Elm. Run this function. Do this thing. You can see I'm calling JavaScript based on the messages.
Yeah.
And then down here, you can see that, well, the play audio thing, it relies on a library. There's some library here that's doing something. It's web audio. So those are over here. So I have them in the other project over here. So like I wrote a TypeScript project here for playing audio.
Yeah, but it's
and
fine.
it has all that
That's
code.
what you need.
So yeah, but it's very important with Elm that you say, well, there is the HTML document and all that stuff. There's the Elm app, like for example, Bookswap, whatever, and all the UI and all this. And then you build modules, other modules, for example, TypeScript modules like this, and you have them separately. And then you import them into the project and make them really easy to use.
Yeah.
So you have to do that with them. You can't just in React, you could just make an audio context right in the UI code if you wanted, because it's all JavaScript. You can't do that with them. So you have to send out messages and get back responses and stuff. That's also complexity. That's also something that makes it a little harder to use sometimes. But it gives separation of concern. Now I have modules, right? Modules are nice. Yeah, but that's also part of the cost.